J.J. Watt shocked the sports world the other day and when he announced that he will be signing with the Arizona Cardinals. Reports later came out that it is a 2-year deal for $31 million with $23 million guaranteed. Now, it seems like it had a lot to do with his connection to DeAndre Hopkins, but then he later announced that it had a lot to do with Kyler Murray and how he believes in him. And I think it's a great move for both parties. But the Cardinals still have a lot of things that they need to do if they want to contend with the Seahawks, Rams, and even 49ers for an NFC West division. Hey YouTube, my name is Tyler, and welcome to The Athletic Nerd. Now, my grades for the deal for J.J. Watt himself, I give it A. Now, this is likely very shocking, or just a lot of people will likely disagree with this, since he said himself they wanted to go to a contender, and the Cardinals just missed the playoffs. But, given his age, which he is about 31, 32 years old, and his injury history, $15 million a year, that is almost fully guaranteed, is actually a bit more than a lot of people were expecting. And I think the Cardinals actually have a lot of potential. For the Cardinals themselves, I give a B+. I expect him to be great for the team, as he's still a very good player, but like I said before, which is what gives J.J. Watt an A, he does have an extensive injury history, and his age, he might regress or just not give that level of production. Now, how it affects the salary cap? Now at the moment, they have about zero cap space after that deal, since they were expected to have between $15 and $18 million, but like I said, about $15 million a year, that takes that up. But cutting guys like Justin Pugh, Devon Kennard, and Robert Alford would free up about $25 million in cap space. They could also free up about $15 more million by restructuring Chandler Jones' deal, which would give the front office the breathing room they need to go to work this offseason. Now, onto the quarterback position. They don't really have anything here. Kyler Murray, former number 1 pick, has been very good, but they could look for a better backup QB, a veteran like an RG3 maybe, since he is mobile and would likely be able to fill in if Kyler Murray ever got hurt. Running back position, this is very, very interesting for them. Now, Kenyan Drake is a free agent. Last year, they used a franchise tag, and it probably wouldn't be too bad for them to re-sign him, as he's still a very good player and has produced. But $8 million, given their salary cap situation, since they do have other guys to re-sign, it may be a good decision to let him walk. They can also sign other guys like Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley, just for some veterans that can be versatile. And they could also draft somebody, if they really wanted to, for much cheaper than expected $8 to $10 million he will likely receive in free agency. Now, the wide receiver position, there's not too much to say here. Also, they have a solid group of guys led by no worse than the third best wide receiver in football in DeAndre Hopkins. They also have speedster Andy Isabella, who they drafted a few years ago, and another good young guy in Christian Kirk. They can also bring back the old-reliable Larry legend, Larry Fitzgerald, if he doesn't retire. But if he does retire and they really want a more reliable option, they could squeeze in, which will likely be one of their only big signings in free agency, on a guy like Marvin Jones, Willie Snead, or Tyrell Williams. It will likely cost them about $8 million, which would take up most of their cap space after re-signing players. But if that is an option on the table. Now, at tight end, they're actually pretty decent here also. They have the young guys like Max Williams, but if they want more offensive versatility, which I mean using multiple tight end sets and other things like that, they could try to get just an upgrade over Max Williams. They could look for a guy like Gerald Everett, who in free agency, or trade a day 2 mid-round pick for Zach Ertz, as the Eagles will likely try to get rid of them to help with their terrible cap situation. Now, a place that they really need to address this offseason is the offensive line, specifically the interior. Now, if you look at the baseline stats, it may not seem too bad, as they only allowed 29 sacks last year, But a lot of that actually has to do with their play calling, as Kyler Murray didn't have a lot of air yards, which means how far down the field he throws the ball. So that means that they had a lot of quick passes before the defensive line can even get to them. But their offensive line is still very poor, especially in the running game. So they do have guys like Lamont Gaillard, who's a center/guard. He's shown some promise, but he hasn't been too great. So there isn't a lot of optimism for him there. Last year, at the tackle position, they drafted Josh Jones out of Houston, who many guys expected to be an early day 2, if not late day 1 pick. So he has potential. They also have guys like DJ Humphries, who is stuck on a very bad contract. So he will likely, he has a spot next year, regardless of what happens. And they also brought injured Marcus Gilbert last season, who could fill a roster spot this year. But a lot of those guys are tackles. So like I said, this is where it comes back to addressing the interior of the offensive line. Now, in free agency, if they really want to spend that, they could look at guys like John Feliciano from the Bills, Austin Blythe from their division rival Rams, or even Forrest Lamp as more of a developmental guy. This will likely cost them around $8 to $10 million. But it is a position they can address in the draft if they really want to. Now, defensive line, they had a very good one without Watt, but now it is even better. They were top 5 in sacks last season, and J.J. Watt did lead the NFL in double team rate, especially and that's without Chandler Jones, first of all, who was injured for most of last season. So having him back along with J.J. Watt is just scary, especially for guys like Russell Wilson, who has complained lately about getting hit a lot, and especially after breakout with Hassan Reddick, who they could bring back next season. I think that they have a really good group. But I would expect them to maybe look for a cheap option at nose tackle, since they do need help in the run game a little bit more, like a Mike Daniels or Damon Snacks Harrison. And now outside linebacker, like I said, they're very good with Chandler Jones coming back and with Hassan Reddick, who they will likely franchise tag. But I will also look to resign guys like Marcus Golden or Devondre Campbell for depth, especially since I do expect them to cut Devon Kennard. Now, at off-the-ball linebacker, they are actually in a very good spot here as well. Last year they drafted athletic freak Isaiah Simmons, who came on later in the season after a rough stretch at the beginning. And he will likely improve a lot in the system after coming off the bench a lot, since he did have a lot of struggles, especially in pass coverage and just assignments. They also have Jordan Hicks, who's a very solid middle linebacker. Even though maybe if it really came down to it, he could get cut, but most likely not. They could look for some cheap depth to put behind them, though, as they lack that. They could look for a guy like Reggie Ragland or Jared Davis for very cheap if they really want to. In the secondary, they're also very good here. Like, they have one of the best groups in football. Now, obviously, they're led by Budda Baker, who, in my opinion, is a top 5 safety in the NFL. They also have young cornerback Byron Murphy, who they drafted a few years ago. Also, like the options they have at the other safety spot with the Thompson brothers, with Jalen and Deontay. And no, it is a joke. They are not actually related. And they could bring back Patrick Peterson if they really wanted to. And he will likely cost about $8 to $10 million on a multi-year deal, which will actually be good if they backloaded it, because so they can have the room to sign other players. He has regressed a bit in the past few seasons, but he's still better than most other options. And just for loyalty, he spent his whole career there. It would be nice to have him back, even just mainly as a veteran presence. Now, if they want to go cheaper and younger, they could look at guys like Quentin Dunbar, William Jackson, and Ronald Darby if they want to save a few $1 million there. But that's basically the roster breakup. So going into the draft, first round, I think that they, like I said before, should go interior offensive line. Most likely Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC. He's a very good player. He is versatile. Maybe could start out to tackle, but most likely not. And if somehow somebody like Rashawn Slater drops, he's also very versatile. He is listed as a tackle, but he could definitely play guard at the next level. But both those guys are gone. Or if Patrick Peterson walks, then I think they choose the extra cap space to sign interior lineman, and then go with a guy like J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. He's very good in man coverage. He's a little physical, and he likes to press, but he's a very good option to have. He could struggle a little bit in his rookie year, but he is a good long-term option. But if they don't decide to go either of those routes, I would trade down maybe a few spots and then draft somebody like Christian Barmore to fill that defensive tackle role, or even draft Najee Harris. And if they trade down far enough in late first round where that's good enough value. But like I said, most likely scenario, if they go Elijah Vera Tucker in the first round, I would draft Javonte Williams out of North Carolina in the second. He has decent speed, even though he's not the fastest guy, probably like a 4.5. And he has decent hands, so he could be good in the passing game. He's a break tackle machine. Like he had one of the best break tackle rates in the country. Besides behind a decent Carolina offensive line, so he'd be a great cheap option to replace Kenyon Drake in the third round. Like I said before, but if they go J.C. Horn in the first, then I will look to draft an interior line also, since they could use multiple guys there, like a Wyatt Davis. But most likely, going with the scenario I put before with Elijah Vera Tucker, I'm going cornerback, since they could use depth there anyway, and just to replace Patrick Peterson eventually, if he signs doing like a 1 or 2 year deal. So I'm going with a guy like Shaun Wade at Ohio State or Greg Newsome at Northwestern, respectively. I prefer Greg Newsome since he has been very good, shows great technique, and he could be a day one contributor. But either way, they're most likely good options, especially since Shaun Wade, I think, was a little unimpressive since he does lack physicality a lot, and he has had a lot of bad games against college competition. But either way, they can't really go too bad there. Now in the fifth round, I'm looking for a guy like Tadaro Slayton out of Florida or Tyler Shelvin out of LSU to, like I said before, to fill that nose tackle position. I also look like a guy like Trey McKitty at tight end, just for more depth there. Now in free agency, like I said, I touched on some options that they could go with before. But even after the cap gymnastics, like the cuts and the restructuring of contracts, there will likely be very limited if they want to re-sign guys like Hassan Reddick, since the franchise tag will be about $15 million, and Patrick Peterson will cost about $10 million, which would, like I said before, takes up most of the cap space that they will have created. But if not, I'd like them to use that cap space on the interior offensive line. Now, overview, the Cardinals have a very bright future. If their overrated offense, in my opinion, led by Kyler Murray, improves the way they should, which will likely come with better play calling and just better performance out of their quarterback. So if Kyler Murray can really take that step up and be a top 8 quarterback in the NFL, go along with what I believe has the potential to be the best, I will repeat myself, the best defense in football. Not in the NFC, not in the NFC West, in football. But the only way that I really think that happens is basically depending on the cornerback position, because weak corners, especially even in that division with wide receivers like Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp, and guys like Deebo Samuel, they won't hold up, especially if there's better competition like Devontae Adams later. Now, that's a closed case. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe for more football and basketball-related content. Let me know in the comments what you think they should do in the offseason, as well as what team to cover next. Hope you have a great day, and peace.